Let's resume. Members, please return to the conference room.
好，俾少少時間等大家啦。
I'll give members a bit of time to come back.
同時通知啲委員返嚟會議室1。
Please inform members to return to room 1.
你都唔夠法定人數。好，大家坐好，我哋開始。好，而家咧，我哋要處理。
We are dealing with motions moved without notice under Rule 32A. We have a total of 12 motions. First, from Ms. Pt2. Mr. Holden Chow, a division is claimed. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes. Ms. Pt2 can choose whether or not to read out his motion. According to Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I move that with the high cost of land reclamation, the land reclaimed should be used for the public. We urge the government to use all reclaimed land at Tung East on public housing. In other words, rental housing, subsidized sale housing, or other forms of subsidized housing.
總共有12條，而家有。
We have a total of 12. Now we have 13.
係咪叫重驗啊？邊個？嚇？朱凱迪係咪都係？OK， 了解。而家係一共係而家係有13條啊。
We have a total of 13 motions under Rule 32A.
13條。
We have a total of 13.
而家要表決嘅呢，就係朱凱廸議員啦。
We are now voting on motions moved without notice by Mr. Pt2. This is the first one.
現在進行表決，喺我宣布停。
We now proceed to the vote. Please check your vote. Voting is closed. The results are shown. 29 present, 10 for, 18 against, 0 abstention. The motion is vetoed. We will not deal with this motion. Mr. Odenchow, point of order. According to Rule 40A of the Rules of Procedure, I move that the division bell be shortened from 5 minutes to 1. I now put the question to you, and that is the motion moved by Mr. Odenchow be passed. Does anyone wish to speak? Those for, please raise your hands. 13. Those against, please raise your hand. No. Any abstention? No. The motion is carried. For subsequent voting on this agenda item, voting will proceed after the bells rung for 1 minute. Ms. at issue, Ms. 003. A division is claimed. According to Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, with the development mode of commercial buildings at MTR stations, since they are commercially driven and might not be ideal, we urge the government to allow the public and LegCo to know and discuss about their negotiations with the MTR Corporation on the Tung East project to make sure that the government will enjoy the maximum amount of public space without constraints from the developer. We now proceed to the vote. Before I announce the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. The results are shown. 29 present, 11 for, 17 against, 0 abstention. The motion is vetoed. Next, 004 from inside issue. The division is claimed. According to Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, I move that since there are at least 500,000 or 50,000 grassroots residents in Tung East living in subsidized public housing, we urge the government to provide ample, affordable shopping facilities in Tung East Town Center for the grassroots. We now proceed to the vote. Before I announce the results, please check your votes. Voting is closed. The results are shown. 29 present, 11 for, 17 against, 0 abstention. The motion is negatived. Motion number 5 by Dr. Fernando Chung. Any division claim? Yes. The bell will be rung for 1 minute. For the Tung East Newtown extension, there will be a reclamation of 130 hectares and an additional population of 120,000, but it lacks healthcare and social and welfare facilities. For example, day activity centers for PWDs, sheltered workshops, homes for the mildly handicapped, auxiliary hostels, homes for the mildly handicapped children and mental rehab patients, etc. These are all absent in Tung. In the future, there will be an additional population of 300,000 in Tung, and there's a zero supply of such facilities. And the demand for RCHEs would be more than 1,000 units, but under the planning, only 300 places will be provided, and the queue will get longer and longer. We urge the government to incorporate these facilities into the planning of Tung East Newtown extension. We will now proceed to the vote. Before the voting is closed, please check your votes. The results are shown. 30 present, 12 for, 17 against, 0 abstention. The motion is vetoed. Next, Mr. Ray Chan, 006. Division is claimed. According to Rule 32A of the PWSC procedure, in the land reclamation and advanced works of the Tung Newtown expansion project, part of the reclaimed area would be used for a marina, but since only high earners would own yachts, the presence of the marina is against not related to public interest, and we request the administration to revoke the plan to build a marina in Tung East in order to shrink the reclaimed area and make sure that public money is spent properly.
Before we close the vote, please verify your vote. Let's stop voting and display results. 30 in attendance, 12 for, 17 against. It's negatived. Next, 007, Tan Jichun. According to PWSC ROP Rule 32A, I put forward the motion that Tung Town East land reclamation, the Tung East forecast for 2030 is very close to the NEF 25, and it's only some 500 meters apart. The noise pollution is forecast to be much worse than the 2023 forecast, so it might lead to a large nuisance to residents in Tung East. So this committee urges the government to redesign the design to ensure that the land reclamation maintains a distance of NEF 25 and ensure that the public, the residents there, will not be inconvenienced. We now put it to the vote. Before I announce closing of the vote, please verify your vote. Let's display results. 29 in attendance, 11 for, 17 against, 0 abstentions. It's negatived. Next one is motion 008. According to PWSC ROP Rule 32A, I put forward the motion that Tung Newtown East, the land reclamation project, the government in the EIA report indicate that they will rely on land transport to transport reclamation material. A lot of residents are worried that the vehicles will lead to a nuisance. So before the project starts, there should be a limit to the number of trips of these vehicles, and we should ensure that these heavy vehicle trips can be set at a maximum of 10 trips per day to reduce the inconvenience to the public. We now put it to the vote. Before I announce closing the vote, please verify your vote. Let's display results. 29 in attendance, 11 for, 17 against, 0 abstentions, negatived. Next, 009, Chan Jichun. According to PWSC ROP Rule 32A, I put forward the motion that Dongchong Newtown East land reclamation project involves 130 hectares of land reclamation. The government might be using contractors that had been working on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai Macau Bridge, and they might have also worked on the third runway, and that contractor has had a poor track record. There has been collapsing of the dam, a lot of sea pollution, and a lot of sand being used in the forbidden areas. So we urge the government to not use this contractor and to prevent the similar incidents from occurring again. We now put the issue to the vote. Please check your vote. Let's display results. 29 in attendance, 12 for, 16 against. It's negatived. We're not handling this. Next, 010, Ms. Lau Siulai's motion. The hospital resources are falling far below the Hong Kong Standard and Planning Guidelines. It's lower than the Hong Kong average. We urge the government to set aside land for the third phase of expansion of the North Langtao Hospital, or for building a new hospital. We now put it to the vote. Please verify your vote. Let's display the result. 31 in attendance, 13 for, 17 against, 0 abstentions. It's negatived. Ms. Lau Siulai motions 0112. The Dongchong residents are paying high prices and they have a lack of choice in shopping. We want to urge the government that they should expand the public space for bazaars in order to stimulate the economy and provide job opportunities. We now put it to the vote. Please check your vote. Display results. 31 in attendance, 13 for, 17 against, 0 abstentions, negatived. We have Ms. Lau Siulai's motion. Next one is 013. We urge the government to meet with school sponsoring bodies to ensure that Dongchong Newtown can coordinate the school opening time with when the residents move in. We now put it to the vote. Please check your vote. Display results. 30 in attendance, 12 for, 17 against, 0 abstentions, negatived. Next motion. 015. One Seogin motion. I don't have the copy. According to PWSC Rule 32A, I put forward the motion that the ratio of private public housing needs to be rationalized in line with the demand for housing. We urge the government to significantly increase the ratio to 70% or higher for public housing to meet the public's needs. Please check your votes. Display results. 32 in attendance, 13 for, 18 against, 0 abstentions. It's negatived. Last item, 016. Mr. Chu Hoi-dek. According to PWSC Rule 32A, I put forward the motion that this committee urge the government to review Dongchong East New Town, the land use, and consider the other specified uses and convert it to comprehensive development area to ensure that the development will have full disclosure and there is sufficient discussion and room for intervention in order to have the best development possibilities for the public. Please check your votes. Display results. 33 in attendance, 14 for, 18 against, 0 abstentions, negatived. Okay, we've dealt with the 32 A's. If we don't have any other questions, so I'll now put the item to the vote. Those in favor, please raise your hand. There's a call for a division bell. 1 minute. We're now voting on the funding application PWSC 2017-18-3 Dongchong Newtown East expansion. Okay, let's vote. Please check your votes. I have not announced an end. If you can change your vote, This is the final voting. Dongchong Newtown East expansion. Are you sure you're done? We'll now end the vote and display results. 33 in attendance, 27 for, 0 against, and 5 abstentions. It's endorsed. Okay, thank you. Thanks the officials. We move on to the next item. We'll invite the next batch of officials. Who wishes for a separate vote for the item just now to be voted on separately in the Finance Committee? So Leung Kok-hong has asked for the Dongchong to be voted on separately. Okay, we now move on to the next item. Agenda item 2, 86mm, Chunmun Hospital, extension of operating theater block for Chunmun Hospital, new acute hospital at Kai Tak development area, and 75mm redevelopment of Prince of Wales Hospital Phase 2 Stage 1. Paper is PWSC 2017-18-9. Members are invited to recommend to the Finance Committee the upgrading of 86mm, part of 87mm, and part of 75mm to Category A at estimated costs of $2,980.8 million, $1,150 million, and $1,376.6 million in money of the day prices respectively. So the government had consulted on the 25th of April and 15th of May with the Health Services panel, and the report is included. We have in attendance Professor Sophia Chan, Ms. Linda Lam, and Mr. David Chak from ASD, Mr. Geng Gok Chang from ASD, Chief Project Manager from ASD, Mr. Michael Lee from Hospital Authority, Dr. Tony Ko, Mr. Andrew Wong from HA, Senior Project Manager Mr. Patrick Howe from Hospital Authority, Cluster Chief Executive Dr. Albert Lowe, Queen Elizabeth Hospital Deputy Hospital Chief Executive Dr. Ho Hiu Fai, and Deputy Hospital Chief Executive from Hospital Authority Professor Philip Lee. Now I suggest that for these we can vote or we can discuss these three items together. If you wish to ask questions, please press the speak button. Okay. The first one is Ms. Mak Mei-Kyun, 4 minutes. Chairman, of course, we hope that the Chunmun operating theater block can be implemented. It's been in discussion for many years. I think in the last LegCo session we had discussed this in the panels. So legislators and residents will support this extension, but we have a concern that even if we extend the operating theater, the works, we discussed this last year, so what methods do we have to accelerate this project, and have we already extended to the maximum? Because Chunmun Hospital, the usage is very high. It's in strong demand. At this point, have we added the maximum amount of land for this operating theater? We're just adding the operating theater, but in the future, do we have any overall expansion plan for Chunmun Hospital? Deputy Secretary, thank you for the question. In adding 20 operating theaters, we have an eye on the population growth and the provision of services, the number of scheduled operations. There is a shortfall, so therefore we have set aside different space for building 20 operating theaters and ICU facilities. Regarding other support facilities, such as suitable bed space or staffing requirements, that needs planning. In Tung Hospital, we have hospital and the latest Teen Sui Wai Hospital. I'll see if Dr. Ko has anything to add. Chairman, when we look at the extension of operating theater of Tung Hospital, we consider the location. The location is very important. It has to be near the A&E department. So in response to Ms. Alice Mack's question, we want to coordinate with existing facilities, and Ms. Mack also asked the development of Tung Hospital. In this year, in the NT West cluster, we had drafted a review, and we will continue to assess the overall development of Tung Hospital. So aside from the operating theater, we will look at whether other areas can match the demand of services. Any follow-up? Well, I want to ask, we now have these 10-year development plans for hospitals. So Tung Hospital, will it have an opportunity to be expanded in the coming 10 years? Deputy Secretary, these 10-year expansion plans at this stage, there's quite a lot of work done, and it involves Tung Hospital and different works. It's quite a large scale.
And we would be asking for some $2.9 billion, so it's quite a large-scale project. And then the way forward, for these extension plans, they might be outside the 10-year program. Okay, now with the operating theater done, okay, of course we will support the extension program, but then what about the other projects? Will they be considered in parallel? Yes, but then that's not under the $200 billion project. Okay, Mr. Michael Tian, first time, so 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. In Hong Kong, we are notorious for having too much money, and we have a scarcity of land, but then in the end, you will still be able to identify it. But then, Bureau Director, you said that in 10 years we will have the Hong Shui Kiu and also Tuen Mun and other areas, and then in the new territories we're going to have new towns one after another, and we're going to have some 400,000 more people there, and then we will also have to detonate the bombs, and one of these would be traffic, and I've been complaining about that. And a couple of days ago, Anthony Chung came here to tell us more about the overall transport planning. But then for the light rail, there is no replacement in sight. All right, let's first talk about healthcare. Bureau Director, in the next term, I suspect that we will still be going after you, right? Okay, for the NT West, Tuen Mun Hospital is the main hospital. I've been giving my full support all along, because the earlier the better. And then for the major operations and so on, for the medicine department is ranked number 5. So out of 30 plus hospitals is ranked number 5. And then for acute or A&E department, this is the most congested A&E department. And also for the joint operation, the average waiting time would be 54 weeks, but then in NT West it's 91 weeks. And then for other operations, the waiting time would also be much longer than the average waiting time elsewhere. Okay, you have the hardware, but then the software seems to be lacking. Recently we heard that after the commissioning of the Teen Shui Wai Hospital, the doctors' workload has increased, and they've been redeployed there, and there has been no increase in manpower at all. So next time when you try to deploy people to NT West, nobody would be willing to go, and you're trying to introduce more reforms. But then what happens if there are more non-local doctors coming to practice? All right, the practice period or the license period will be extended from 1 year to 3 years. Still, there is no way that you can mandate them to go to NT West, and whoever can see that the workload in NT West would be the highest, they would be reluctant to go. So earlier on, I've been going after Dr. Ko Wing-man, and I've been asking him, and then he said that by the latest in 2019, well, the funding will be linked with the size of the population, and I suspect that all the major operations would be changed. And then for NT West, I think the ratio should be similar to other clusters. And then he said that the report will be available in 2019, and now it's only 2017. And I suspect that by the fourth quarter of this year, you should be in charge. Okay, so you should be in charge in the third quarter already. So what I'd like to see is with regard to the resource reallocation exercise that will be packed to the size of the population. When can that be done, and how is it going to be done? And also, what I'm most concerned about is the doctor's workload is way too high, and also is too remote, and nobody would be willing to go there. And then I've heard that HA has been offering this special allowance, but then apparently this is against its own principle. So how can you ensure that there would be sufficient surgeons who are willing to go to Tuen Mun Hospital after the extension, so that the average waiting time can be shortened? All right, the question is clear. So, Undersecretary, well, thank you, Mr. Tian, for your question. If we look at the population-based resource allocation formula, all right, the review is underway. Definitely that will be done. As to the findings of the review, that should be available within this year. And of course, if you look at the overall planning of the HA, well, this year, not 2017 and 18, we have completed that already. So for the next exercise for 2018 and 19, we will have to look at how the findings can be incorporated in the resource allocation exercise. Thank you. What if people are reluctant to go there? So it's about whether the doctors are willing to go to the remote areas. So can you ask the Undersecretary to briefly respond to that? All right, in terms of manpower for Tuen Mun Hospital, I can also ask Dr. Ko to tell us more about this, because all along, despite the fact that we haven't really introduced the new model for the resource allocation exercise, but then in NT West, all along we have always understood that with an aging population, the demand is huge in the new territories, and therefore we have been increasing the resources even before the findings of the study are available. All right, Dr. Ko. So time's up, but then please be brief. Yes, in terms of the waiting time, we have already recruited new colleagues. For example, for the newly commissioned Tin Shui Wai Hospital, there is a net growth of 3 doctors or 3 colleagues, and also at the time of the recruitment, we also attach importance to training so that people will be deployed to different posts. But then I'm asking about whether you can introduce an allowance for them, a special allowance for them. So can you give them a special allowance? Well, at present, when we recruit people, we adopt the same package. So we apply the same package so that it will be offered to everybody. Well, that's a waste of time then. Yes, Helena Wong. Well, Chairman, of course, we support this because earlier on, the administration decided to set aside $200 billion for the 10-year hospital extension program, and we supported that. And for the 3 proposals for the extension of operating theatre block for Tuen Mun Hospital, new acute hospital at Kai Tak development area, and also redevelopment of Prince of Wales Hospital Phase 2, we support all those. But then we also have some questions, and what we are particularly concerned is about the new acute hospital at Kai Tak. And of course, we welcome that other than the children's hospital, we're going to have a new acute hospital at Kai Tak to tie in with the overall population growth in Kowloon. But then what I'm more concerned about is Queen Elizabeth Hospital for QEH. Well, according to what is said here, with the new Kai Tak Hospital being commissioned for QEH, all the work will be transferred to the new hospital in Kai Tak. But then, as we know, for Yau Chim Mong Hong Ham, To Kwa Wan, and Sham Shui Po. All these districts have an aging population, and in the past they used to go to QEH whenever there's a problem. So with the new Kai Tak Hospital commission, I think with the main jobs moved to the new hospital, well, it's said here that QEH might be redeveloped. But what about the site at QEH? Will that be kept for healthcare services so that they can take care of the needs of the aging population in those districts? You cannot expect people to have to travel all the way from Yau Chi Mong to Kai Tak because it's a long distance. And then according to the feedback from some residents, with the QEH closed, do they have to travel all the way to Kai Tak because it's very far away and not all of them are driving? So with regard to the site at QEH, how would that be arranged? Undersecretary. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, with the commissioning of the Kai Tak Hospital, QEH services will be transferred there, and afterwards, QEH site will be used for healthcare purposes because we will still need to develop healthcare services there. So on the one hand, definitely we will have to have hospital beds and healthcare services will be provided. But then what will happen in the interim? And of course, in the neighborhood, we also have Kwong Wah Hospital. And Kwong Wah Hospital will also be expanded, and that's underway. So that's the current arrangement. But Chairman, what I'd like to know is, what is the plan of the Bureau? What kind of healthcare services will be kept at the QEH site? Well, at present, as to what services will be kept there, it's still early days. Because what we are sure about is definitely that site will be used for healthcare purposes. Definitely there will be hospital beds. Well, it will be hard for us. It will be hard for us to support you because residents have been going after us day in, day out as to whether or not they can still see a doctor there and would they be able to go there and use the services there. But then if you have no idea and they may be required to go to Kai Tak, then how can that work? So there might be some problems with your planning. All right, I can ask Dr. Koh to give you more details, but then let me reiterate, that is definitely that site will be used for healthcare purposes. There will be hospital beds and there will also be ambulatory care. But what about the HA? Can you ask them to tell us more? Yes, I'll ask Dr. Koh to respond. Or Dr. Low. Thank you for your question. Well, with regard to the redevelopment of Kwong Wah Hospital, I'm sure that will also help the local residents. Because by 2021, the first phase will complete it, and then by 2025, the stage 2 will be completed, and all the facilities will be upgraded and modernized, and I'm sure the residents nearby will be able to use that. As we know, QEH and Kwong Wah Hospital are quite close to each other. But then, as the Undersecretary just said, well, on our side, we are still working on the forward-looking planning as to what's going to happen in the 20s and 30s in Yau Chi Mong, Kowloon City, and in the neighboring districts. We are still working on the planning. And depending on the outcome of our review, we are still looking at the Kings Park site as to what should be done about it. For example, outpatient services or inpatient services, which services would be more needed. So only after we have completed the study will we be able to say. I hope that you can concentrate on primary care for the grassroots, for example, diabetes, body check. These are supportive and also preventive care so that the elders do not have to travel a long distance to Kai Tak. All right, I think the officials have heard your comments and they've already said that they would be conducting the review according to local needs, and definitely that site will be used for healthcare purposes. Next, Huang Chun-yu, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, we hope that they can go ahead with that as soon as possible, because if you can save one life, it's like putting out a fire. And according to some frontline doctors, they're having a hard time because you're talking about the design in the 90s, and it's very small, and with the new equipment you simply do not have enough room for one more person to go in. So with the new operating theatre, of course we hope to complete it as soon as possible, because the load on Tuen Mun Hospital is already quite heavy, and the utilization rate of the A&E department is already 100%, and then for emergency operation, well, they will have to wait for 2 years. So well, when we talk about our daily needs, in fact, what we need most is medical care. So I think the community is in dire strait, and therefore we would like to pass this as soon as possible, so that the imminent problem, we're talking about some 220,000 people going to the A&E department of Tuen Mun Hospital. We are talking about some 15,000 operations a year. So they are having a hard time, and therefore we will have to take the opportunity to discuss the layout and also the planning for Tuen Mun Hospital. And Tin Shui Wai Hospital is still not able to play its full role. Well, according to the latest progress, the Bureau might want to report to us the latest situation, because for Tin Shui Wai Hospital, probably because they have a shortage of manpower at the front line, and a lot of the facilities are not ready, and therefore when the patients go there, well, it's already the sign-off time for the colleagues or the staff there, and they will have to go elsewhere for treatment. So we hope that in the long run, more resources can be put into this, and the imminent problem of the long waiting time and people going to the hospital simply do not get the treatment that they need. And then we also have a shortage of doctors. We would like to see an increase in the hardware. And also in new towns, other than Tuen Mun Hospital, Tin Shui Wai Hospital, and also Pok Hoi Hospital, how are you going to make sure that they can play their full roles? So I'd like to know more about your future plans. So can you tell us more? Under Secretary. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Whether it's about distribution of resources to the HA, or whether it's about the overall service demand in NT West, we are all very concerned about those. And just now, Mr. Kwong talked about Tin Shui Wai Hospital services. Of course, at present, we are still progressively commissioning the services. At present, it's open for 8 hours. We hope that by the end of this year, the A&E department can be open for 12 hours, and then by next year, it can be extended to round the clock. As to the clusters arrangement, I'll defer to Dr. Koh, who can tell you more. Yes, Dr. Koh? Dr. Tony Koh? Yes, thank you. I'll be brief. With regard to acute hospital, well, in NT West, we have Tuen Mun, Pok Oi, and Tin Shui Wai hospitals where A&E departments are provided. And for Tin Shui Wai Hospital, other than local residents, there would also be some. They would also offer some sophisticated operations. And then for Pok Hoi Hospital and Tin Shui Wai Hospital, we hope to increase their services so that the pressure on Tuen Mun Hospital can be eased. And we expect that with the increase in the services offered by Tin Shui Wai Hospital, it will be able to meet the needs of the local residents. For Tin Shui Wai Hospital, of course, it's only commissioned this year, and we hope to offer more services. But then, with the hardware being completed, we hope that that would also help ease the pressure on both Tuen Mun Hospital and Pok Oi Hospital. Next, Elizabeth Squad, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, when I heard Mr. Kwong Chun Yu speak, so he's taking this very seriously, and he said that saving a life is very important, and of course we support that. In fact, every item in the queue of the PWSC is very urgent. We'd like to pass them all very quickly, but then if you want to pass them quickly, then you should not be delaying everything, so that we can have all of them passed as soon as possible. Chairman, the DAB of course supports the proposal to extend the operating theatre block for Tuen Mun Hospital, and also the development of a new acute hospital at Kai Tak, and also the redevelopment of the PWH Phase 2. But then, as I said, in particular for the PWH, well, we are concerned that even with the redevelopment program completed, it will still not be able to resolve the problems in Sha Tin and also NT East, because there is a shortage of healthcare facilities, because PWH is not just serving residents in Sha Tin, it's also serving many residents in NT East, and there are also many services where the waiting time would be very long. For example, use psychiatric service, and even with the redevelopment, I'm most concerned that in the future it will still not be able to meet the needs and demands. And also with the hardware in place, what about the software? What about healthcare professionals? We have a shortage, and for a long time it has still not been resolved. And for a long time the administration has not been able to do its projections accurately. All right, they might say that yes, that can be resolved, but then by the time it's commissioned, you will still not be able to resolve the problem. And today, if you have a shortage of staff, you do not have enough people to man the services, then in the future, you will still not be able to make it. Well, I've been asking this question in the past when I asked the administration as to how it's going to resolve this problem, and will they be able to increase the number of hospital beds, and also what about the manpower? So can you tell us how you're going to make sure that the two will match? Undersecretary, thank you. We understand that in NT East, the service demand has been rising. And for stage 2 of phase 2 of the redevelopment, and of course it's divided into 2 parts, and the project is of a large scale, and after completion there will be hospital beds and other services, and Professor Lee can also tell us more. As to manpower, if you look at it from the overall angle, well, this month we'll be reporting to you the manpower planning report, and we will also have to look at the projection on healthcare professionals, and of course that's a projection, and we will have to look at the demand pattern to determine how much more manpower do we need. For example, on the number of doctors in 2018 and 19, the situation will improve because we will have more graduates. And then for nurses, of course, we do understand that we need more, and the HA would also be recruiting more nurses in different disciplines. Thank you. I'll defer to Professor Lee.
Thank you very much. For the entire phase 2 expansion, we want to meet the demand for hospital beds, and by 2027 we will increase the number of beds by 450, and later we will introduce another 400 beds, coming to a total of 2,450 hospital beds in order to meet the demand of New Territories East. Moreover, we will also enhance our daytime services as well as operating theater blocks. There will be specialty floors to meet the needs of modern medicine. Next, Mr. Leung Chi-Chung, 4 minutes. Thank you. For Tuen Mun Hospital and the redevelopment of Prince of Wales Hospital, I support the proposal. Mr. Roy Kwong said that we need to help the patients. That's why the work is imminent. But in the previous item, he supported the motion to abort. So he's not being consistent. So this is hard to understand. I do not understand why the Democratic Party is resorting to such tactics. The expansion of Tuen Mun Hospital is very important. Right now, the population stands at 1.1 million, and by 2025, it will rise to more than 1.25 million. I think the accurate is more or less accurate. You might not be able to account for private properties in Tuen Mun and Yuen Long. You are planning 20 new operating theaters, but would that be adequate? I have my concerns. For the project itself, I am no engineer, but I see that you are consolidating the existing operating theaters into a single block. So there are a few questions. You will send patients to the existing patients to the operating theater, but for A&E patients, they might be sent to the OTs straight from the A&E department. But the new passage might be worse than the existing one. Right now, patients admitted to A&E could be sent to operating theaters directly, but for the new operating theater block, the space on the ground floor is limited, so is there any room for improvement? Undersecretary, perhaps Dr. Ko or Mr. Wang? Dr. Ko, thank you. For the work details, perhaps I would invite Mr. Hao to supplement. For the new OT block, it's located at the new A&E department. The future A&E department will be bigger. So if future A&E patients require surgeries, they can reach the OT block quickly. And in terms of the design, in the new block, there will be special elevators so that patients can arrive at OTs quickly. So the entire flow has been optimized. Will the existing A&E department be consolidated at this block? The A&E department will be expanded to include the current car park, and part of the existing A&E department will be retained. So in other words, patients can be sent to the new OT block directly using the elevators. Anything to add from Mr. Wang? Mr. Hao? To add to what Dr. Ko said, on the ground level at the A&E department, it is now located at Block D, and it will be expanded to the new OT block, and 4 special lifts will be installed for needy patients to arrive at the right A&E floors. Dr. Fernando Chung, 4 minutes. Thank you. We will certainly support this project, and hopefully it can be implemented ASAP. There are a few areas of concern. First of all, the Kai-Tak Hospital will be a mega hospital with 2,400 beds, and the redeveloped Prince of Wales Hospital will have more than 2,000 beds. So these are 2 very big hospitals. For the Kai-Tak Hospital, at an earlier panel meeting, the hospital authority estimated the cost at $50 billion. This is a substantial amount, because when we look at the North Lantau Hospital, which is relatively small, it costs $2.5 billion. Tin Shui Wai Hospital, $4 billion. The Children's Hospital, $13 billion. Kai-Tak Hospital, $50 billion. At 2,450 beds, the average cost is more than $20 million per bed. Compared with hospitals in other countries, the construction cost is relatively high. I'd like to know whether there are special factors leading to such high costs for the Kai-Tak Hospital. Mr. Andrew Wang.
So basically, the approximate estimate now is very much a broad brush approach to estimating the likely cost of NAH. But at the moment, we've broken it down based on the bed numbers and the approximate CFA, the construction floor area. And if you use the construction rates that are common in the market, we've established that 50 billion is actually a reasonable estimate at this stage without the detailed design having been completed. We believe that 50 billion is a reasonable and as far as we've done the detailed preliminary design, without the detailed design, we believe it's actually a reasonable rate based on the number of beds and the likely construction floor area that we will need to meet those services and the number of beds required.
Dr. Fernando Chung, well, he just said reasonable, but he has to give his justifications. My justification is based on the global average of the construction costs per hospital bed. I'm looking at costs in America. There's a range. I'm taking the upper bracket. When I compare it with Hong Kong, our cost is still far higher. The upper bracket reaches $16 million per bed. Right now, for us, it's $20.83 million per bed. So can you give your justification?
So the estimates are basically based on the market rates we understand as they are now, and also basically on previous hospitals that have been constructed in the recent past. So the rates that we use to do the estimate are actually basically compared to the recently completed similar hospitals of similar complexity with the similar sort of services provided. So the basis of the estimate is checked and double-checked, and we believe that actually even though the rates may appear high or compared to other countries, there's also the local factor, the factor of the construction industry in Hong Kong. These are factors that affect the price locally. So it's very difficult actually to compare the rates of Hong Kong construction to rates of other countries.
He said he compared with recent hospitals constructed in Hong Kong. Well, I've named all of them. North Lantau Hospital, Tin Shui Wai Hospital, Children's Hospital. What other hospital has been completed in recent times? Can Mr. Wong submit written information after the meeting on details of the construction costs?
Actually, recently is the also for the Children's Hospital, so it is similar to the Children's Hospital.
Okay.
All right. Please provide details in writing. Dr. N. Chang, 4 minutes. Thank you. Chairman, I'd like to ask about the costs as well. First of all, we've been talking about the Kai Tak Hospital, and before this paper arrived, I still thought that a new acute specialty would be introduced, but it's not the case. So what's the proper name of this hospital? Is it Kai Tak Hospital or Kai Tak Acute Hospital at sites A and B? You call it the Kai Tak Acute Hospital. Is that the full name? Yes, correct. In other words, are you going to admit A&E patients only? The role is a acute hospital, just like other acute hospitals like Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The functions are similar. There will be a specialties like cancer and brains, and there will be other A&E services as well. I looked at the construction cost. It's about $1.1 billion. I thought it's only for an A&E clinic. the $1.1 billion is just the consultancy fee. And they talked about design and tender documents, tender documents, etc. Why would these cost $800 or $900 million? Isn't that too expensive? Can I invite Mr. Wong to explain more? Mr. Andrew Wong.
The actual scale of the new acute hospital at Kai Tak is actually very large. At the moment, we estimate that the CFA is approximately 500,000 square meters. So the scale of the project is very large, and so the consultants that we need to engage to meet the scale of and the complexity of the project, plus the timeline, means that there is a commitment of approximately 10 years or so. So the consultancy fees are issued and estimated based again on our past projects, but actually the final price was based on a tender process. So it's through a scrutiny and through the normal procedure of tendering that we come back with this price. But because of the scale of the project, it results in the estimate that you're questioning.
Dr. Chang, just now, when Mr. Wong asked Dr. Fernando Chang's question, he cited the special circumstances of Hong Kong, which led to such construction costs, and he admitted that the cost is the highest in the world. I don't know if Mr. Andrew Wong has a background in consultancies. Well, I'm lost for words. What does that mean? Do you agree or disagree? Can you give us details to explain why it costs $860 million for the tendering documents? I think Dr. Chang wants to know more about details of the consultancy services. No, I just want them to explain why they have to pay this price. For us, it's ridiculously expensive. Mr. Wong?
Maybe I can explain a little bit more on the consultancy fees. The consultancy's fees actually comprises of 5 consultants. One is the project management consultant, one is the architectural consultant, one is the structural engineering consultant, one is the quantity surveying consultant, and then finally there's the architectural consultant. So basically, because of, as I said, the scale of the project is so large that if you broke it down into smaller hospitals, actually the fees will be...
Well, I think he's repeating himself. Can you allow him to finish, please?
Please.
So basically, it's just proportionally. It's actually, we believe it's a reasonable fee and a reasonable cost. It actually comes back from a tendering process that we've gone to the marketplace to get back. So we don't believe it's unreasonable based on the scale of the project and the requirements of what we have to be designed and completed for the whole process of building the NH.
Next, Mr. Andrew Wong, 4 minutes. First of all, I'd like to respond to Leung Chi-Chung and Elizabeth Quat. I don't understand Leung Chi-Chung's accusations. Perhaps he was dreaming or he wasn't paying attention. He didn't pay attention to our votes for Longhair's motion. We abstained. I didn't. Well, I used my time to rebuke his claims. Elizabeth Quat said we are always filibustering. No one actually filibustered on Tung Chung East. Did you actually pay attention to what we were talking about? She wasn't here. We have been very consistent, but DAB has been very conflicting. Just now, the motion, I asked them to consider it after the meeting. I still supported them. At the housing panel, the DAB supported the proposal. I didn't want to waste my time here, but I have to clarify. I have to rebuke them. You cannot point fingers at other people. Mr. Michael Tian asked a very good question. In terms of hardware, you said you would do something, but they didn't talk about manpower deployment. Perhaps they can do so in writing. This might not have to do with public works, but it's meaningless if you just tell us about hardware. And there have been a lot of medical incidents at Tung Hospital in the past, but I don't want to criticize frontline healthcare officers. Hopefully, details can be given on how the software and hardware can go hand in hand. Of course, I would support I will support having more operating theaters or new OT block. But the actual provisional services is important. In terms of car park, this is an outdoor car park. From your plans, there will not be any car park anymore. So I'd like to know how many parking lots will be provided. In the past, there have been a shortage of parking lots at public hospitals. From my experience, there have been an acute shortage. But one floor of car park would be lost in the future. So what are your plans? There will be 2 floors for the machineries or utilities. So what's your plan on the parking lots? In terms of manpower, we are very concerned as well. With new services, we need manpower deployment. So we can provide details later. As to the parking lots, can Mr. Hao give more? Thank you. In terms of parking lots, in the existing car park, there are 8 lots for ambulances and 12 parking lots for staff. For the 8 lots for ambulances, they would be reprovisioned across the street. As for the 12 vehicle lots, we are working with the Tung Hospital. They will accommodate these 8 spaces in the existing site. This is an area of interest because we are talking about a hospital without enough parking lots. Well, I'm happy with the answer, basically. All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Ray Chen, 4 minutes, please.
I think the public are concerned about these 3 medical facilities and wish it could be implemented as soon as possible. They also criticize the FC and PWSC of filibustering, so I'd like this to be endorsed, and when it arrives at the FC, I would like it to even be ahead of Dongchong land reclamation. So even though legislators who supported the adjournment of the item of Dongchong East, they want this item to queue ahead of Dongchong and FC. I said when the media asked me, I would like this to be done as soon as possible, and I would even like it to be ahead of Dongchong land reclamation. But when we go through the documents, I want to follow up on Ms. Ann Chan. The hospital in Kai Tak, this fund is just for the consultant fee, and in the paper it's very simple. It's even in Appendix 2, if you look at the footnote, it doesn't give us details of the consultant, and Mr. Wong talked about 5 different parts. I don't see that in the document, so I'd like the officials to provide the information as soon as possible to help the PWSC or the FC help us determine this 865 million, whether it's reasonable. Of course you say it's reasonable, but we cannot determine whether it's reasonable from the documents we have. You asked us to vote for it, but you haven't provided us with the information. I want to follow up on the details. In the Kai Tak paper, it says in May you invited the tender, and you need to get funding from the FC first. And for this item, you want it to be completed by the end of 2017. So I would like to ask, what's your progress? I think you will get the funding before summer recess, and you'll complete the tender and you will start works. So by the beginning of 2018, will you get funding? Because you estimate that it will be completed by 2024. Now, regarding the 50 billion in the health panel, they didn't mention 50 billion. I think there was some dialogue in the panel. We don't even have the minutes yet, but we see that 50 billion was mentioned, and the legislators called for a breakdown in CBE bracket 2 2016-17-01. You didn't answer the question. I agree that you don't have a design right now and you cannot give us a breakdown, but this 50 billion, how did you arrive at that figure? It's like Dr. Fernando Jones' question. You need to help us understand whether this 50 billion is cheap, is expensive, or reasonable, or what. We need to have more information to support this item, Chairman. Deputy Secretary, I'd like Mr. Wong to answer.
Please, the question about the tendering process. At the moment, we've had the tender return from the consultants for the consultancy fee. So those 5 consultancies that I mentioned, the tender returns have already come back, and actually the tender assessment process is ongoing. We have agreed that once the tender assessment process is complete and the prices have been opened, then we will put those prices into the FC, the Financial Committee paper. So in the middle of July at the FC meeting, we will amend the paper to reflect the actual tender return prices. So that's the situation, and then once we have approval for funding, then we're in a position to award the consultants' agreements by the middle of this year. And so then we'll start in earnest to do the design for, first of all, the foundation works. So the plan is that the foundation works design tender package will then be prepared in order that we'll come back to this council to look for funding for the foundation works contract in 2018. And then thereafter we will then do the detailed design and then seek funding probably for the main works so that we can tie in and finish by 2024. Regarding, again, the 550 billion estimate, so at the moment it is a broad brush estimate based on what we have now on CFA, basically the square meter that we estimated required to complete the project and provide 2,400 beds. Detailed design will take place once we have the consultants on board. Once we have the detailed design, then we'll be able to fine-tune our estimate. We'll be able to fine-tune the details of the works so that a more accurate estimate can be then prepared. And then we're in a position then to give you more detail and a breakdown of the 550 billion.
Oh.
主席，一句啦，我希望喺上。
Chairman, before they go to the FC, I would like 2 steps. We need more information to evaluate the engineering consultant fee, whether it's reasonable. And the second thing is the 50 billion, how did they arrive at that figure? And we need a document. Well, they said they would provide you with a written document. Please note that our meeting ends at 1 o'clock. I heard a lot of members support this, so I hope we can endorse this before 1 o'clock next. Mr. Ho Kai-ming. I support this item, but regarding the transport of Kai Tak Hospital, I have queries. I'm aware that in Wong Dai Sin District Council they have some questions about transport, and I heard that there are link roads to Kai Tak Hospital, but according to their district council, they say they have to rely on Pt2 trunk road to connect Kai Tak Hospital, and they also have dual lane, dual carriageway roads. But at the district council, I asked the transport colleagues, asked them whether an ambulance can reach Kai Tak Hospital from Wong Tai Sin in 12 minutes. And my estimate is that it cannot, especially during traffic congestion, because this is a remote area. It's close to Guntong. It's not near Wong Tai Sin, especially from Sanpo Gong. When the bridge is demolished, they have to take the tunnel, and then from Kai Tak area they can only reach Kai Tak Hospital. So I want to ask the officials, how can the traffic infrastructure be rationalized for the residents to use this hospital? If you cannot provide convenient access, would you consider seeking a plot in Wong Tai Sin to build a hospital there? So 2 questions. Thank you, Chairman. Well, regarding traffic infrastructure, Dr. Low or Mr. Howe could respond. And regarding Wong Tai Sin, the Sengmo Yun, and there's a report, and previously I had visited district council. I had met with councillors. So on one hand, we understand the district council would like A&E for Sengmo Yun, and we had explained on numerous occasions that we did a lot of studies and it is not feasible. We now have Kai Tak Hospital. It will be a large A&E hospital, so we hope to provide the infrastructure. So I also recall that we have some follow-up services, and there were different views in the clusters. The hospital authority has already fine-tuned that. They had redefined the cluster hospitals. So in this area, the Wong Tai Sin residents' service provision can be improved. Dr. Low? Let me supplement a little bit. In QE, A&E patients, 50% of them are from Wong Tai Sin residents. A lot of times they rely on the ambulance service, and we are aware of the traffic problems. So with the new facility and new infrastructure, we hope that Wong Tai Sin residents, when they are sent to the new Kai Tak Hospital, it should be more convenient. But for details, as far as we know, we have to rely on Mr. Howe for elaboration. We've met with CEDD Transport Department and talked about traffic arrangements at Kai Tak Hospital. The patients will have to rely on MTR. I'm asking about ambulances. How will ambulances arrive at the hospital? Well, if you look at the different roads from Guntong, they can use Waiyip Street, and Wong Tai Sin, they can use Guntong Road, Kaichang, and they can have access to the hospital. And I understand that the government is building a road, is building an underground pedestrian tunnel from Prince Edward West, from Kai Tak development area, going through the old airport runway, and that will be a more convenient access. We are liaising with the relevant departments on this issue. Next, Mr. Chan Zhanying. I support these 3 items of funding application. Mr. Chan Jixun asked about the new Kai Tak Hospital. I see that in the paper, Chunmun Hospital, they're building a radiology department, a theater, operating theater block, and they will have to complete it by 2021. It takes 4 years. So using the same timetable and applying it to the Kai Tak A&E, if they complete it by 2024, they'll have to start by 2019 or 20. But I see in 2021-22, they still incur expenses. So why do they overlap some 2-3 years? I think the tender should be done earlier to meet the completion date. That's for the Kai Tak Hospital. The second question is about Sha Tin Prince of Wales Hospital. Phase 2 will start at the end of 2017, and it will be completed by 2027. So when they complete the main project, if it takes 4 or 5 years, then why don't they illustrate how many years it takes for the preparation? Why do we only know that the money will be spent to 2025? So could you clarify Kai Tak and Prince of Wales Hospital, the actual time and details required? Mr. Wong?
Basically, the reason why it appears that Prince of Wales needs a longer period to complete is because the Prince of Wales is an existing hospital, and so we have to undertake decanting and renovation works and so on to allow the area within the Prince of Wales Hospital to be vacated and demolished before we could actually start the construction work. So there's approximately 2 years of works in advance where we have to divert utilities, build a decanting building at Sha Tin Hospital, and demolish buildings before we can actually start doing new works. So there is a delay of about 2 years to do that. And then after that, we've made measures to advance as much as possible and compress the program by we will plan to do the foundation works and then come back and then do the main works. So in effect, while we're doing the foundation works at PWH, we'll be doing the detailed design. So there are measures in place to compress the program, even though it seems that it's quite long. But the principal reason is because Prince of Wales is an existing hospital. We have to maintain services, and so there is 2 years of work to prepare for us to do the actual new block. Going back to Mun, basically we already use measures to compress the program by already starting the foundation works, which is ongoing. While it's been under construction, we've done the detailed design, and so once we have funding approval, then the normal period for raising a building of that complexity with OTs is about 4 years. So we believe the periods are reasonable.
主席，其實我問緊啟德嗰個。
Chairman, I was also asking about the Kai Tak Hospital.
On KTAC, again, the scale and the number of sites and so on is actually very large. So basically, because of the scale of the project, again, we will have consultants on board first, and then we'll do the detailed design. And as we're doing the detailed design, we hope to do the foundation and issue the foundation works beforehand, so that we'll do the foundation works in parallel with the detailed design and then come back and do the main works. But maybe my colleague, Mr. Patrick Howard, can give a little bit more detail on the Kai Tak program.
下一位張宇人議員，4分鐘。
Mr. Tommy Chung, the Liberal Party will support this item, but I want to ask the Deputy Secretary that recently we see we have a hospital that is about to be completed, but we don't have doctors. But now you're doing so much expansion work. I want to ask you or HA how we can retain doctors in our government hospitals. We know we support building more hardware, but we see in a few years' time the 2 medical schools plus the dental school. How many graduates do we have? We can see that there's going to be a shortfall. C.Y. Leung said, if I remember correctly, he wants to add in the few coming years add 5,000 hospitals. What about doctors? If we don't have doctors and nurses and the medical staff, how can we cope? How are you going to handle the software? Are you going to wait for the next term of government and next secretary? Well, just now there were also questions about staff and software. Deputy Secretary? Well, regarding staff questions, in the Health Services panel, there's a report about manpower planning. So aside from planning the manpower needs, we need resources to add staff. we want to be able to provide different services, and especially if we have so much hardware and infrastructure being built, if we want to provide more services, we need staff. So aside from resources, we are aware that there's a shortage of doctors in HA. There's a shortage of 300. So by 2018-19, we want more doctors. We hope to see more graduates, and we also will re-employ retired doctors. On the nursing side, in the coming year or two, we have different private universities where they can increase enrollment. So we should have more nurses, and the HA should be able to create more establishment posts and recruitment to handle. Well, I think it's inevitable that you'll have to create a larger establishment, and we all agree we have to add resources. We don't want to see money and resources invested in administration and other issues. We want the doctors to continue to serve in the HA, and honestly speaking, I don't see how you solve this problem unless you import doctors. But your existing arrangement, it's very difficult to take that step. But no matter what, you need a multi-pronged approach, and you can't just ask for funding and take a wait-and-see approach. Of course, I don't believe that government doctors' pays should exceed private sector pay. That should not be the way to attract or to retain doctors in the government sector. But I think you do need to have a comprehensive approach. Thank you. We have 2 more speakers and 4 more speakers who wish to speak for the second time. If we want to conclude this item, I suggest, and if it's not necessary, I suggest that you don't ask a second round. Mr. Otong saying, I agree with you. We'd like to deal with this agenda item, and I support this fully, and I want to have all the hospitals start work, because regarding high-tech hospital, whether it's in health services panel or district council.
Because in Wong Tai Sin, I belong to Wong Tai Sin, Kwun Tong, and Kowloon City. We all wanted to be implemented as soon as possible. But then I'd like to ask the relevant bureau and department to deal with the transport network outside the future Kai Tak Hospital, because you're going to use Kai Tak Road and also Lin Chiu Road. I can tell you that these are deadlocks, because you can understand that under the energizing Kowloon East, well, the industrial area has been developed into a commercial district, and as a result of that, the current transport network is already overloaded, and if it's to be extended to the Kai Tak Hospital, it's going to be a dead end. So I urge you to come back with something in writing, so that for those of us representing Kowloon East, we will be able to make a decision on the basis of information. And you said that there's going to be a general A&E department, so that it will be able to meet the demand. But then for Wong Tai Sin residents, when they need to go to the A&E department, they either go to Kwong Wah or QE or United Christian Hospital. So you're talking about residents having to go to 3 different hospitals, even though they are from the same district. I think this is just outrageous. So before Kai Tak is completed, when or how are you able to resolve these problems? That is the acute demand for A&E services in Wong Tai Sin, and it's affecting many Wong Tai Sin residents, because during the interim period, how can that be handled properly? So I'd like the Undersecretary and also the colleagues working on the transport network, so please do give us the information. Okay, we don't have the details yet with regard to transport network, so I can only ask you to note that, and you can supply the information later. Undersecretary, yes, I think we have touched on that earlier on. of course, I understand that Mr. O is of the view that there is room for improvement, but then for the HA in their planning, I think it's also something that involves different departments and disciplines. So when we go back, we'll talk to the relevant department and then we'll supply a supplementary information paper. With regard to Wong Tai Sin and the situation with regard to the Wong Tai Sin residents, I'll defer to Dr. Low to give you the details. Yes, Chairman, when Wong Tai Sin residents need to get A&E services, most of them would have gone to QEH, and a small number would go to Kwong Wah Hospital, and then for Kwun Tong residents, they might also use the service. But then for ambulance, we don't have any control over that. Most of them would have gone to QEH for the time being, and then I believe that with the commissioning of the Kai Tak Hospital, and if the transport network is planned properly, sorry, Chairman, I don't have enough time. So I'd like to ask Dr. Low, that is during the transitional period, would they be prepared to work on a package to help resolve this problem? So that's all I'm asking for. So before the acute hospital is completed, what about A&E services in Wong Tai Sin? So I don't have enough time, so please do respond to that. Dr. Low, well, you can also provide a written paper. Well, what I can say is, well, after the redelineation of boundaries for the new clusters, well, they might not be able to get the A&E services in Wong Tai Sin. I'm not happy with the answer, so please do give us an information paper. Yes, Lang Kwok Hong, 4 minutes. As you can see from the question and answers from Wilson Orr, you cannot blame us for filibustering. He's asking for the situation in Wong Tai Sin, and then on the 15th of June, they'll be asking you the same question because the QEH will be demolished and redeveloped, and according to your plan, the site will be vacated. And then you're telling us that what is going to happen to Kwong Wah Hospital? Apparently, Wong Tai Sin residents would also have to go to Kwong Wah Hospital. Well, Chairman, this is a project costing over $50 billion. It doesn't really cost you too much if we ask a couple of questions more, because you're talking about $50 billion, and then for $20 billion and $10 billion, well, they are not giving us the details at all. Well, Lang Kwok Hong, we are not talking about the $50 billion hospital expansion project. We are talking about this particular project. All right, can we make some savings? Can we have less decoration and then have a cheaper building? So apparently you're trying to round us up so that we can all vote on it today. But then even if we were to have 1 or 2 more meetings, will that take up too much of your time? Because we need to sort things out. That's all we are asking for. So with the new hospital, so what I'm trying to ask about is, will there be dental services? So will the elders be able to get dental services there after we have spent so much money on it? And second, well, the pro-establishment members have been asking about this too. So what about doctors? So Dr. Chen, well, the suspension on nurse training, well, that was introduced in the CH Tung era, and then they said very much the same thing. So please don't stand in the way of government's proposal. But then under the doctors, well, it's not that we have a shortage of nurses. It's just that they've gone into private practice, and that's what Donald Tung preached too. He's trying to commercialize healthcare services, but then for doctors, they have been overloaded, and that's why they all went into private practice. I think that's because of poor planning. Well, when you ask me to give you the hardware, I'll definitely give that to you. Well, Chairman, you don't have any hard responsibilities. I think we are asking reasonable questions. Well, you have a shortage of doctors, so after the doctors have left, where would they go to? Have they gone into public sector or gone into the private sector? If you do not reform the HA, if you do not reform the situation or resolve the problems faced by public doctors, then you can only import labor. And will that really solve the problem? Are you sure that they'll be able to resolve the problem? Well, honestly, what has been, well, let bygones be bygones, and well, we have no idea as to why that happened. And then you might ask, how come the lawmakers were so stupid back then, well, it's not our own making. So please go back and think about it and reflect on yourselves, because you know very well that there were blunders in the healthcare policy, and still you put the blame on us. Well, if you do not have the software, how can you come up with the software? All right, Tommy Chung was very clear, and he was asking that more doctors be imported from overseas. But then how can you do that? Okay, is it feasible? Will they be prepared to work for you for life? And yet you are not prepared to tell us that. All right, you're talking about $50 billion. And the implications are so far-reaching, because there will be immediate impact. And still, you're asking us to close our eyes and then approve everything. Yes, we can pass it, but then by the time when it goes to the FC, we will still have to do that. That's our job, even if you criticize us more. So, all right, you've used up your time. What's your response, Undersecretary? All right, for dental services, the new hospital in Kai Tak will not be providing public dental services, because that's not under your healthcare policy. As to nurse training, the HA still has 3 nursing schools to train registered nurses, and that's been underway. And of course, there are other universities and service providers running such programs. And in the next few years, we will have over 2,000 nurses who will be joining the profession. All right, for doctors going into private practice, how many of them have gone into private practice? How many of them have gone into private hospitals? And how many of them joined the public sector? Yes, we'll provide you with a breakdown next time. Next, Claudia Mo. Well, I have to apologize for that. I understand that for public sector healthcare is about hardware, but then Tommy Chung first raised the issue of software, that is doctors. And the Undersecretary also said that, yes, we are short of 300 doctors, and you have to import overseas doctors. I'm sure most Hong Kong people would not object to that. If they are coming from Australia, United States, and UK, they would think that they are good. But then whether or not that will cost more, we don't know. Yes, we understand that we do have overseas doctors coming to Hong Kong, but then our impression is when you call that overseas doctors, in other words, you're talking about foreign doctors. They should have come from overseas countries. But then apparently the Hong Kong government's current policy is that you're trying to bring in mainland doctors. That's why people are saying that when you try to relax the rules so that overseas doctors can come, and that's something that we are not prepared to accept. That's a confidence issue. So can you clarify what's your policy? We do have a mechanism in place. Just now the HA announced that they would be approving more doctors they would be allowing more doctors to come in. Undersecretary. Yes, I'd like to clarify it here. We don't have a policy to import mainland doctors. That's number one. And also under the existing mechanism, well, at the Medical Council, we do have this limited registration policy. In other words, for doctors coming from other places, definitely they will have to serve in the public sector. On top of that, they would also have to be applied by the HA, because the HA will be looking at the disciplines or the specialty where they are short of doctors, and then they would try to recruit doctors for that specialty. And then if you look at the proposed reforms for the HA, they are trying to facilitate overseas doctors so they can come in more easily. And for the 1-year registration, they're trying to extend that to 3 years. But then in the interim, every year they will have to get the renewal approval from the Medical Council. So that's all I'd like to clarify. Claudia Mo. But then for the extension from 1 year to 3 years, they will be allowed to stay here. And then once again, if they can renew their contract, and then on top of that, if they can have another contract signed, then they'll be here for 6 years, and then if they can stay here for 1 more year, they'll become permanent resident. So you're giving people the impression that you're trying to relax the rule so that more mainland doctors can come here and become permanent residents. So some people are not happy with that. So can you clarify the situation for them? Undersecretary, well, I thank Ms. Mo for raising that, because that gives us an opportunity to clarify this. As I said, we don't have this policy. And second, if you look at the figures from the HA, we are not saying that all of a sudden there will be many foreign doctors or overseas doctors coming here, because every time we're talking about limited numbers, because not all the specialties should have overseas doctors working in that particular specialty. That's the control mechanism. And as I've said, well, for the extension from 1 year to 3 years, limited registration, well, under the contract, that would make it more attractive. But then in the interim, every year they will have to get the renewal from the medical council to see if it's suitable to grant them another year's license. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I apologize. I understand that is a digression from the topic, but then since it was raised by Tommy Chung, I just try to follow up on that. All right, thank you. They have already explained the situation. Okay. We still have Helena Wong, Fernando Chung, Ho Kai Ming. Okay, if we want to deal with that before 1, so please be brief, because I can see that we are all very supportive of this project, and also Leung Kwok Hong. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, what's wrong with them coming again next time so that we can ask a few more questions? Okay, for those who would like to speak for the second time, do you agree that we should extend the meeting by 15 minutes so that we can deal with this item? Will those in favor please raise their hands? Extension of the meeting by 15 minutes at most. So that's the rule of the PWSC during the first 15 minutes. If majority of members present are in favor, we can extend the meeting. Okay, so will those in favor please raise their hands? Extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against please raise their hands. Abstention? No. Okay, so we'll conclude by 1:15. Maybe we don't need that long. Okay, Helena Wong, second time, 3 minutes. Chairman on QEH and also the Kai Tak Hospital and Kwong Wah Hospital. In fact, in the paper, very limited information has been provided, and we have been told that the HA has conducted a strategic review on the development. So supposedly you have conducted a review, and also on service planning, and also in the Kowloon Central clusters, several hospitals are involved, and yet the information paper is silent on all those. We don't know how they are going to be redeveloped and what's their positioning, and also most of the services of the QEH would be transferred to the Kai Tak Hospital. So what will be kept in the QEH, and also will you be consulting the public, or will you be coming back to the health services panel so that lawmakers can be involved? I think there is a vacuum here because we have no idea as to what you're going to do there. And then for the residents, of course, they'd like to see a round-the-clock A&E department because they are very familiar with the QEH, even though it has a history of several decades since it was commissioned in 1963. So what are your plans, and what will be transferred and what will be kept, and what are the newly added resources at Kwong Wah, and what are the services that cannot be absorbed by Kwong Wah? Yes, I understand that this is a very urgent item, but then I hope that before going to the FC, the HA and the FHB can tell us more about your review, which is underway, so that we can have a blueprint as to what's going to happen. And also, what about cancer treatment? You have cancer centers and so on. Will they all go? And will the patient resource center be kept? So what will stay in QEH? So there is so much that we don't know yet. If you have already got some initial plans, you should have put that out for consultation. You should have consulted this council and the public, so that at least we'll be able to exchange our views with the residents, so that they can tell us what they would like to keep and what they don't want to keep. So for the first tier, second tier, and third tier healthcare services, so will the first tier be kept in QEH? I hope that at least you can provide us with an information paper. And what can you tell us now? Undersecretary, Well, for the HA, with regard to the planning for each cluster, they do regularly go to the district council to report on the progress. And on the question raised by Helena Wong, I'll defer to Dr. Low. Well, for the Kowloon Central cluster, well, recently we completed the redrawing of the boundary. In fact, that's in response to the request by the community. Well, for Kwong Wah and QEH, we have 4 non-acute hospitals. We have some rehabilitation hospitals to support that, and for the transitional arrangement for Kwong Wah's A&E services, that would be supported by Kowloon Hospital, so that for inpatients for Kwong Wah Hospital, they can go to Kowloon Hospital for rehabilitation treatment, and then for QEH, the Buddhist hospital, and also the and not the other hospital, the other hospital will also be supporting it, so that when the QEH services are transferred to the new Kai Tak Hospital, such services will continue. In particular, Wong Tai Sin residents will also be able to receive a continuum of care. So I suggest that you provide a paper. Yes, Chairman, I'd like to ask, just now the Undersecretary said that you consulted the District Council, but then this is the Legislative Council. We have never read such papers. We have never heard about the positioning and what changes are going to take place. So please supply the paper before going to FC. All right. Yes, Dr. Chan, 4 minutes. Well, I'm not a member of the PWSC, but then since it is on healthcare services, I came here to support it. I'm still working part-time for the HA, and there is no conflict of interest, but then I still would like to speak on the subject. Because just now, when I heard it from my office, I was working in the office just now, but then every time when we talk on the subject of healthcare services, people would try to come out and try to claim some credit. All right, we're talking about the hardware, and now they're talking about software. I'd like to clarify clear the air. First of all, it's been a long time since we last redeveloped the hospital, and therefore in the next 10-20 years we do need to redevelop our hospitals urgently, and therefore I urge you to support it. Secondly, we have this 10-year extension or expansion program, but then in terms of software, we haven't really put enough resources and manpower into that, and I'm sure the HA is aware of that. And in terms of investment in software, definitely we need to have recurrent expenditure, and we need to increase recurrent funding, and I'm sure the administration is aware of that, because I've been talking about that on different occasions. And some people also talk about importation of labor.
Different sectors would like to recruit imported labor, but we cannot ask a foreign domestic helper to become a doctor. The salaries and remuneration of imported labor will be the same as local recruitments. For limited registration, the hired doctors, including those from the mainland, when you only 50% would be renewed after a year. I'm conducting a major study even for doctors from overseas or mainland. Only a small percentage would remain with DHA. The question is, who can put up with 60 or 80-hour work weeks at public healthcare? For outpatient clinics, and only local doctors would be willing to do that. For doctors who stay 3 to 6 years, they are all local doctors. Why is there such a serious loss of doctors? We can say that the morale of our doctors is very low, because no matter how hard your department works, you would be criticized by the media and legislators. This is a reason for the low morale. When we talk about, even when we talk about hardware, Well, let me address Mr. Leung Hong's question on the ratio of public and private doctors. How can we ask doctors to stay in public healthcare? This is something we must think about. A lot of doctors told me that since they are criticized so much, they would rather turn to private healthcare. And that is profitable and the patients would be satisfied. 3 members are waiting to speak. After that, we will proceed to the vote. Dr. Fernando Chung, 3 minutes. Second time. The speaker is not coming through. I'm not trying to force it through. I just said that 3 members are waiting to speak. Dr. Fernando Chung, 3 minutes. Chairman, I'm more concerned about transportation at Kai Tak. The Kai Tak Hospital has 2 sites. And it's outside of the Kuntong bypass. It's not accessible by public transport. And according to your plan, ambulances have to arrive via Chung Street. It's a dual-lane carriageway. So for this substantial hospital, together with the children's hospital, the transportation cannot meet the needs of the new facilities. Well, for the 2 sites at Tuen Mun Hospital, the new hospital would the children's hospital would be located between the hospital and the road. For Site A and Site B, in other words, the 2 sites for Kai Tak Hospital, there's only 1 footbridge linking both. For Children's Hospital, there are 4 access to Site A and 3 to Site B. In other words, the Children's Hospital would become the main passage between the 2 main blocks, or blocks A and B. So I'd like to hear more about this. I do not want the area of the Children's Hospital to be deprived. Mr. Hao, thank you very much. We realized the problem mentioned by Dr. Chung. So during the planning, we talked about an extra site next to Site A. And that area shares a point of access with Site B. In the future, there would be pedestrian access on different floors between Site A and B. There would be public access and staff access. So the 2 groups would be separated. For the new acute hospital in the future, it will support the children's hospital. There would be passages. So there would be arrangements in place. Mr. Jonathan Ho, how about transportation? Mr. Jonathan Ho, thank you. There's no need to repeat what I just told you. It does not help improving accessibility of the Kai Tak Hospital. Right now, we are concerned because we are relying on busy roads to reach Kai Tak Hospital. This hospital is not accessible by highway, so in future highways, would you suggest creating an access to these hospitals for T2 or Chung Road 2? Nothing has been done yet at the PWSC, so you have to rely on that road. I don't know how long we have to wait. So I hope that the administration would do proper planning for Wong Tai Sin. If this hospital indeed support A&D services in Wong Tai Sin, as I asked earlier at the district council, where are the ambulance dispatch points for residents of Chiwan-san? How can an ambulance arrive within 12 minutes? They said there are many different dispatch points for ambulances in Wong Tai Sin. If I live in Chiwan-san, how much time is required to reach a hospital by ambulance? As to the specific number of minutes, we don't have such information on hand. But we can provide the details in writing after the meeting on transportation. According to what Mr. Howe said, he does not really understand the district situation. Well, he addressed your question. He will address your questions in writing afterwards. You need to know which roads are involved and how long would an ambulance take before arriving. I'm just talking about ambulances. The service pledge is 12 minutes, but you have not providing enough information. If this is submitted to the FC, hopefully you can offer some papers afterwards. Mr. Lam Gong, 3 minutes. Chairman, saving patients is imminent. So no one wants to have patients to visit. If transportation is not solved, then the effects or the impact of the new hospital would be jeopardized. So our questions are actually constructive. You have to consider the moods of patients and their families. If you cannot improve transportation, the impacts of the hospital would be hurt. So you have to be patient, because the questions about transportation were all sincere. At the central bypass, you want a shortcut between Central and Causeway Bay because they serve the vehicles there serve the buses. And well, at the affluent areas, the construction of access is ongoing. We are not stupid. And if you are to do something, you have to secure funds. You have to come to us for funds before you can do anything. If you do not seek the funds, how could you secure the funds? Have you been approved by the Town Planning Board? You thought that our questions were trying to send it away. This is an extremely pricey project, and the hardware will only serve us after 10 years after its completion. So if you are so impatient about the questions, what can we do? You have a background in public works. What's the urgency? I'm not filibustering. And even questions from the first session could not be answered. So, and if you promise to solve the transport issue, I will ask whether you will have a light rail station or light rail stop. Your time's up, Dr. Fernando Chung, 2 minutes. Chairman, he failed to address the transportation issue. It shows that they did not consider the issue carefully. So we hope that they would explain themselves clearly in writing before comes to this point. And your answers have been very casual. Even though we are mainly looking at the site and the advanced works, and there's no detailed plan. But Dr. Ko showed us about Tisha Hospital before, and the public access allows people to play football. But the wards are very crowded. For a 6-person ward, in reality, it accommodates 8 people. So it's not about the design, but the operation or management. I want to go on record as saying that for the future design of the hospital, you should consider the interests of patients. After population aging, the situation actually got worse. Can you have bigger wards and more privacy inside? You should not have very crowded wards and very wide public access. And we are talking about healthy people, but then the patients face a lot of constraints. So I hope your future design can accommodate patients and patient organizations. Any other questions? If not, I will put this item PWSC 2017-18-9 to the vote. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. No abstention. Does anyone require a separate voting at the Finance Committee? Dr. Helen Wong. The next meeting will be on the 21st of June at 8:30 a.m. Thank you very much.